Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. On today's episode, we're taking a look at an action figure line from Bandai known as Action Heroes, and this is their One Piece anime action figure series. And you have Luffy, you got Zoro, you got Sanji. My son is over the moon for these things. I know this anime has a huge following, and Bandai actually reached out to us and said, hey Red Cup Review, would you like to review some anime figures? And of course I said, bring them on in, why not? So without further ado, we're going to be taking a look at the sculpts, the paints, and just how cool these anime figures are. Again, Captain Awesome is over the moon for these things. So let's just see if they hold up to as cool as what he thinks the anime really is. Stay tuned. Here are the heroes of One Piece outside of the package, and one thing I'm going to point out right off the bat are these little mini diorama-y things that they're in right now, which is pretty cool. If you're careful, when you unpackage them, you could slide these out and have them posed in front, and it makes for a nice little display option. That's actually the housing that holds the plastic themselves. So I have them laid out here, the three figures with all their accessories. You have Luffy comes with 4 different sets of hands. You have, or rather 4 alternate hands. Then you have Zoro, comes with the most accessories over here on this side of the screen. He comes with 3 different swords, 2 different hands, and the 3 swords in their sheets that you could attach to his belt here. He's probably the coolest figure right off the bat, I could tell you right now. And Sanji comes with a swap out fiery leg, and he has his shoe that you could put on, and another set of hands. Now we're going to take a look at each figure individually and show you guys the pros and cons of each. We're going to start our journey here looking at Luffy, the captain of One Piece. He is the hero of the show, and these figures really shine in their articulation. Where they lack in paint applications and accessories, they pick it up with the articulation. And just so you guys know right off the bat, if you pull them out of the package, this didn't happen to mine, I want you to see that all these characters' legs and their torso, everything is pretty much on a ball joint. So if it happens to pop out, like if you really stress that joint right here, as long as this piece in here doesn't snap, you're going to be able to snap it right back on. The leg actually didn't fall off. I was posing them, and the leg popped out, and I was able to pop it right back on. So you can get him in kicks really high. He has double knees, right? He has a rotating ball joint at the ankle. He's got, double knees on each side. He has the bicep swivel. He's got crazy articulation in the elbows here. The head articulation looks down and rotates around really well. It does not look up at all, actually. So that's a little bit of a nit. He should have been able to look up. And he doesn't have any ab crunch, but he does have a rotating around there, right? So at the $20 price point, the articulation is an A+. However, the figure falls short in other areas, like in color and paint apps. I was talking to my son, and he says he would have been happier possibly spending a few more dollars for some more accessories and for a better paint job. Although the paint job that is on here is actually quite good for what it is, but it just didn't hit that ultra detailed paint that we expect from other action figure lines in the same price point. We're lucky though that some of the sculpts catch the shadows halfway decently, which is nice, without there having to be like extra blacks thrown in there. Take his hat, for example. For you older collectors that want to collect something like this, a little bit of black wash will help bring out the detail in the hat. Things he could have came with: an alternate maybe hair sculpt that pops off, so you can get another hat that maybe pops on his head, because this does not come off, and you cannot get the hat on his head, and it wouldn't fit on there anyway. So that's a little bit of a gripe. Another gripe is as far as accessories goes, he could have came with like maybe attachable arms, because I hear he does this thing where his arm grows really long to like punch people or blows up, and he has like a cannon arm effect. They could have came with like different attachments for his arm or something like that. Maybe a deluxe figure down the road. They could offer at a greater price point that kind of encapsulates all those type of things. But moving on, judging the figure based on what it is, the paint on his face is very well done. There is no bleed from the eyes or the whites of his eyes into his face. There's no bleed from the dark of his hair onto his face or from any other area, like the scar on his chest. The sculpt in that is very well done. It's nice to see that at least the paint that they do offer is pretty tight. The paint on this foot right here is just a smidge out of order, but it's not something you're going to notice when he's posed up on your shelf. And he stands up pretty well on his own. with very minimal effort. Another thing they could have included is perhaps an action figure stand, so you can get him kind of jumping and doing like jump kicks or like crazy punches, because you know these anime characters are over the top and they're always battling each other like all whacked out, you know, articulated poses and stuff, and a little bit of an accessory to have him like be on like a stand, like a flying stand or something like that. I know the character doesn't fly. You guys get the idea. Like he's jumping through midair or something. As far as articulation goes, again, in his feet, you can have him do like a crisscross applesauce pretty well. And it stays. I just, you know, for the sake of video and time, I'm not going to do that. But you can get him to cross his legs and sit like that. So that's pretty cool. And another nit that I have with this figure in particular, because some of the other ones were better out of the box. Again, you can hide some of those joints by you're just maneuvering and putting a little bit of elbow grease into your posing, and you can hide some of those joints even better. The Luffy I got actually had 2 of the same inside legs. So this is actually a right leg, and it's on his left leg, and the left leg is actually on his right leg. So this down here and this down here were mismatched. That's a quality control issue. That is unacceptable in my book. So I am taking off major points for this quality control issue on this figure in particular. And let's face it, this is Luffy. This is the hero of our show. We don't want any problems with it. But when Captain Awesome saw it, he said that there wasn't that much of a problem. He still played around with it and said that something like that isn't something he's like 100% gonna, like, you know, take points off for or disappoint him. He was more concerned with the actual colors in the anime, and a little bit higher price point for a little bit more wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. Over here in his arm, you can see how the ball joint works up in his arm area, and you can hide it by just kind of, you're going to have to, you know, the arm goes out like that, and you can hide the articulation, hide that joint a little bit better, but not totally, and you can still see his chest underneath there, and that's, I don't know, that could be an issue. As far as toys you just play around with, this is fine, but as far as collectors go, that is a big no-no. But it depends on what you're judging the figure on. All right? That's Luffy. So now we're going to take a look at some of the other ones. All right, unfortunately, the more I mess with these toys, the more the problems start blaring out and glaring out. And I apologize in advance to Bandai, but I have a responsibility to the people who follow the channel and who are going to watch this review. So they're pretty much, as the reviews go on, it's getting worse and worse, and it does not stop here with this action figure in Sanji. He looks great just standing there. If you're just going to put him on your shelf and not have him doing any action poses, he's fine. He will not stand up or support any of his own weight as far as an action pose goes, like him throwing a kick. And he is the master of kicks and fire flame kicks and stuff like that. And it's just not going to happen. You can't even balance him on the fire kick and have him throw the other one up. But it's not a total nightmare because, again, the paint is done really well on his face. I love the way the mustache looks. The hair is very flat. There's not a lot of paint in that. The arms have the same thing that Luffy has in his articulation, but what's better than that figure in this one is that you could actually push the arms back up, and they actually hide. They look really well when you do that, you know, and then you can pull them down and articulate it all crazy and stuff, like, you know. He's got the same amount of articulation with the bicep swivels, the double elbows. Again, I would love to have an action figure stand so you can stand these figures up and having them doing like some crazy thing like that, throwing a crazy punch or dropping a crazy kick at one of the other characters. But you can't because there's no stand for it. Excuse me. Moving along, he does not have a waist articulation. It goes around like that, just like the other figure does. This thing comes off relatively easily, the fire. Then you got the little ball joint at the end there. Excuse me. Getting his shoe on is a nightmare. I almost broke the figure trying to get this on. Just to get it on, you're going to have to do the hot water trick. You're going to have to use a blow dryer, but I cannot get this on right now. And for the sake of just moving the review along, I'm going to have to just keep it moving. So that was a big disappointment because I wanted to show you guys how that worked. And there's no flat bottom there. Again, a little bit more paint would have went a long, long way with these things, although the paint that's on there isn't that bad to begin with. But look, they stand up pretty well. You got to put no effort in and you can just get them standing straight up. But I'm telling you, these figures are not up there with what we expect from today's action figure market. These, with the exception of the articulation, which is amazing, they just don't hold up even paint-wise or accessory wise to other $20 action figures that you might have in your collection. All right, now this figure ain't too bad. Zoro's definitely the coolest of the bunch. They obviously spent the most amount of tooling and work on this figure. They used the most amount of resources for him. He comes with the most accessories. He's still not a home run, though. As far as the paint apps go on the face, again, as you expected with the other one, the anime look is cool. There's absolutely no bleed. The paint is not messed up. It's not wonky. That's cool. He's got the nice scar on his chest. The paint on the rest of the figure is quite flat, though, so that's a little bit of a disappointment, but then again, all the other figures had that. But for the paint that is there, it is fine, and the sculpts do capture the shadows pretty well. He's obviously the nicest looking one out of the three. The swords are super soft plastic, though, so they are warped. You kind of got to just, I don't know what you can do with them, but the swords, the shape of the swords are a little warped, so be wary of that as far as when they were sitting in the plastic. You kind of, when you have swords like this, you got to go with a harder plastic, guys. And his arms also articulate down like the way the other ones do, and they also articulate back up to kind of get the shoulders to look a little bit more normal, but that's fine. He has the same articulation in his legs. But the plastic hinders the articulation as far as the legs kicking outward. They do kick out to the side. And you can get them in a crouching pose also. But you're going to have to put a little bit of elbow grease in there because this does interfere. That's why I'm a big proponent of soft goods on action figures where they have sashes and stuff like this. And they wear, robe type stuff. But again, if he did have that stand, you'd be able to put him in some crazy dynamic poses anyway. And he wouldn't necessarily fall over. But you know what? Look, minimal effort, and he's standing right there. So that's pretty good. He is better than the other ones. Taking a look at the sword sheets themselves, they have a nice amount of deco in there, and they have a good amount of paint, and it's not, it's solid. They all kind of go right in here in these little holes in his sash. You can put his swords in, and you'll notice this one has no tip. And the tip of it is right here, so you can have the swords sheathed or unsheathed if you pull the top of the swords off, which is pretty cool. So obviously I have him holding his two swords. Here's his other sword. And if you want him to have certain swords out of the sheets, you just pop the top of the swords off. And you can make it look like he's holding the swords in his hand without having those swords there. So that's a really cool attention to detail that I really like. He does look pretty bad. I like it. Not bad, good bad. He looks pretty good bad. So yeah, it works. He's got a nice little earring on the side there that has a nice little amount of detail in it too. Up on the side of his head. It actually has some detail in the earring. And the flat paint on his hair doesn't do anything for the sculpt because the sculpt on the hair is actually really nice. It's really detailed. But without that little bit of black wash in there, you kind of lose a lot of the detail. So again, higher price point, better action figures. Maybe they'll have deluxe versions of these things. But again, when you pose these things, this is going to be a thing I repeat over and over again. When you just pose them minimally and have him standing there, my table's a little wobbly. He looks pretty good. He looks fairly good. And you can get him to hold this pose. I just got to flatten out his legs and use the articulation of his feet and stuff like that. But he can hold that. He looks pretty dope like that, right? Then again, there's just too many issues with these things for me to give them shining reviews. I know Bandai, you sent these things over, and I want to give you guys all the... Look at that. Boom. Done. See how easy it is? And you just put a little bit of work in. This is the figure to get out of the three. Unfortunately, you want the whole set, but this is the guy right here. Now, as far as height comparisons go, I'm going to use a Black Series figure to show you guys a little bit of a height comparison. We're going to move him back. Put the Black figure there, Series figure there. Put him next to Sanji. Okay, they are bigger than your average Black Series figure. So as far as height goes, they're going to be taller than your average 6-inch action figure. They're more 6.5 inches. So the Black Series figure is about 6 1/4, and they are about 6.5. So there's your height differential there. All right, I'm trying to be as diplomatic as I possibly can, and I'm going to ask the YouTubers out there this question, and hopefully you can write in your answer below. What is it that you look for in an action figure line? Are you just a fan of One Piece? And do you just want them represented on your shelf? Because if that's the case, look at them. They look great just standing there, right? But if you're more of an adult collector or an action figure photographer, then totally steer clear. These are not up to what we would consider the $20 to $25 price point that we come to expect from other action figure lines. They just missed the mark between paint deco and being short on accessories, not being able to stand up and kind of pose together because of a lack of maybe balancing issues and stuff like that. That's why I kept mentioning over and over again they need stands. They missed the mark. Sorry. 1.5 cups out of a possible 5. Thanks, Bandai, for sending these figures over. My son said that he's going to have a lot of fun with them, but he even thinks they're kind of suspect too. That's coming from a 10-year-old. So your mileage may vary. Again, thanks, but we got to be as truthful as we can to the people that are actually buying these things. This is not an action figure commercial. This is an action figure review. And as far as the review goes, they fall short. But thanks anyway for sending them over. And thanks to you guys for tuning into the Red Cup review. And hopefully you guys will tune into a future episode. All right? Take care.